Hello and welcome everyone. In this lecture, I'll be creating a Blazor application to consume a web API. Basically, this is the start of this series of lectures, which will ultimately ending up a web API, a customer web API, which will be consumed with the Blazor front end. So the Blazor will have its pagination and all the logic for the pagination will be well explained. Now this course, this entire video is divided into several sections, and the video contents are that these are the following individual topics in the form of lectures. So clone an existing ASP.NET 6 customer web API from GitHub, and this existing ASP.NET 6 customer web API was built in two of my previous parts on this topic, and they will be in the description of this video. And create a Blazor server app, define the customer model, create a service to consume the web API, and create a customer list component, and create the navigation menu for the customer list component. Now let's go through how the end product is. Okay, thank you. So here is the Blazor application, and if you click on this customer list, it will nicely spit out or display a customer list of first name, last name, contact, email, and it has got all the pagination features. This is the first page. When it is initially loaded, this is the third page, fourth page, and if you go to the previous, it will take you to page 4, next take you to page number 5, and then this is the first page, and you can easily paginate, browse through this pagination links. So, and this is the front end, which is superimposed. I have superimposed just to tell you, this is the back end. This is actually the web API that this Blazor app was consuming. So it has got page number 1. So if you get this page size, total record, and if you go to the next page link, you will actually go to the next page, page number 2, and that's what is being consumed by the Blazor application. So if you click on, go to this, so it will take to the page 2, and if you go to the previous page link, it will take you back to the page 1. All right, so having shown you how the end product will look like, I think it will give you more interest to sit back, relax, and at the same time enjoy this tutorial. So have a nice time. Cloning a ASP.NET 6 customer web API from GitHub, and I shall be cloning the web API that has pagination features incorporated, run the application to show the pagination features of the web API, and this web API backend will later be consumed by a Blazor application in the forthcoming lectures. Finally, the completed Blazor application will have pagination features as well. So guys, this is the GitHub repos which I will be cloning, and this is actually when cloned, I'll be showing that this is a web API. All right, so let's click on code, let's click on this copy, and then I will open my File Explorer or Windows Explorer. So now I have browsed to my the folder where I would like to clone this code. Okay, so what I will do, I will click on new and show more options and click on open in terminal, and then simply write git clone, copy the copied output from the repository, and it will be cloning it. Okay, so now it has successfully cloned it. So what this application is, let me run it. Okay, so if I click on this start without debugging, control plus F5 or any of this button, it will run the application. So let's run the application and see what is the output. So this is showing a weather forecast, but I have to browse to my customer API. Okay, so API/customer. So this will give you the list of all the customer. Now I have got 451 records over here. So this is actually the page 1, and the page size is 10, total page is 46, total number of records 451. Okay, so how do you go to any page? So let's see page number 10. I've got something coming on my mouse over, and I will just successfully okay, let's throw this URL in and click on enter. Page number 10, page size is 6. So page size is the number of record it shows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, succeeded, true, error null, message null. Now, if I make the page number as say 5, leaving the page size as 6. So this is page number 5. And if I make this page size as 10, it will grow the page size to have 10 records retrieved from the database. It's an actual database. Okay. But if I make the page size as 11, let's see, it will still restrict it to 10 results. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because it is restricted in code. Now, this is the application that will be later on, added with another Blazor front-end web server application, Blazor server application in the forthcoming lectures, in the future lectures. Okay, thank you. Welcome guys once again. So in this lecture, I'll be creating a Blazor server app. So let's flip over to Visual Studio without any further ado and start building up from where we left. In the last lecture, we have actually cloned a GitHub repo ASP.NET 6 web application demo. So I will add to the same solution a Blazor web server project. Okay, so new project, Blazor server app, that is in my recently used project templates. So click on next, and I'll have to give it a name. So I will give it a name, say next create. So that's all for this lecture. Hello and welcome all. In this lecture, I will be defining the customer model. Now, I will be creating the model class for the customer, and this customer class in the Blazor app is a mirror of the customer model in the Web API project. So let's flip over to the Visual Studio. So let's come back to the project Web API.consume and create a new folder, models. So add new folder. And then add a class customer class. So within this public class customer, I've got a few public property which mirrors the database table as well as the web API model. Okay, so ID get set. This is a string. First name. Copy it over. And change this first name to the last name. Last name and then contact and email. Save it And at the moment, let's give it a build. So build the solution to see everything is all right or not. Okay, 2 succeeded, 0 failed. So these green squiggly lines are telling me non-nullable property must contain a non-null value when exiting constructor. So consider declaring the property as nullable. Let's see the database. So here also in the customer class of the web API, these are declared um, non-nullable, but you may still go to see the uh, database for this project. So entity framework core test DB, and if you look into the customer table and view the designer, so these are not null. Last name, contact and email are have to be given. So all of them are non-null. That's why this cannot be given as this is all non-null for this model also. So that's it. The making of the customer class is done. Hello and welcome all. So in this lecture, we'll be creating a service to consume the web API. So for that, I'll be creating the service, and this service will be handling the communications with the customer web API, and I shall use HTTP client to make requests to the API endpoints. And let's flip over to Visual Studio. Now I have cleaned up, I have closed all the tabs, unnecessary tabs, and before we proceed, we have to uh, make a dependency. We'll have to add project reference to the ASP.NET 6 Web API demo Web API project as a project dependent project. Okay, so this will be adding this dependency, you can see here, and then I'll be creating a services folder on this web API.consume or Blazor project. So add new folder. So services folder, and I will add a class. Name it customer service. All right. And in here, I need to use two using statements. I need to bring in the wrappers folder to this class, and for that I had to use this as a dependent project here. Okay, and then not models folder, I'll be using the customer model that we created. Right. So I'll be dependency injecting this HTTP client in the public constructor of customer service class. I'll take this suggested name and then this declared variable. It's basically make it underscore, just so that you're not confused. Is assigned the passed on HTTP client. Okay, so this is dependency injection. Okay, so there is another method. So basically, I wanted to tell you one thing. If you had stayed away with this, rather than making it underscore HTTP client, you are free to choose HTTP client for this also. Then this should be written as this dot HTTP client equals to the passed in HTTP client. But either of the choices are valid, but I would stay with my choices going for a different variable name. So I'll get rid of this. Some developers and some authors choose the second method also. So it is up to you. You feel free to do whichever way you'd like. So public async task, and this will be on the paged response class. I will quickly revise what was the paged response class in the web API. So public async task paged response list of customer, and let us call this get customer async, because I'm going to get the customer, rather customers. So that will be an appropriate name rather than all of these choices that they are giving me. And then I will pass as parameter page number and the page size. So that is, the shell is already created, and then I'll have to write the code over here. So basically, let's visit the page response. Okay, let's see, go to the definition. Okay, so this was the page response class in the web API project. So this page response class was implementing a response class, which you'll shortly see. So it had a few members, a few properties: page number, page size, total pages, total records, and a previous page link and a next page link. Okay, so, and there is a constructor which takes a data, okay, and the page number and page size, page number and page size and data. So this dot page number equals page number, this dot page size is page size, this dot data equals data, message is null, succeeded true, error is null. Okay, right. So where does this data comes from? This is coming from the, let's see, the response class. Go to the definition. This is a base class. Base class has got a data. This is a constructor. It has got data equals data. Public T data. That means it is generic data. Okay. Type T is generic. It could be plugged with any uh, particular, any class or any type. Okay. So data comes from the response, the base class. So let's get back to page response. So you'll understand now this page response class is used, and I'll have to fiddle appropriately. So first line is trying to get the API endpoint. Now this one I have got on my clipboard, just so that not to make a mistake. I will just paste it over here, because this is most critical line or crucial line, because that is what is defining the endpoint. So if you remember, when I started this set of lectures, I showed you how the API is behaving, So you have seen that the API behaves with the localhost colon the port number slash API slash customers question mark page number equals the given page number and page size is given as the page size from the query string. All right. So this is defining the API endpoint, and then we'll have to return what? Because async has to be always followed by the await keyword. So I'll be using now this injected HTTP client. Okay. So HTTP client, or the variable for this page is in HTTP client that is injected is this one. Okay. So now this is assigned the injected HTTP client, so that's fine. So return await HTTP client dot get from JSON async. Okay, and asynchronously from JSON we'll get the paged response of again the list of customer, and then this get from JSON async will operate on the API endpoint because it needs an endpoint. Okay, and it was defined in the previous line of code. Okay, so don't worry about this green squiggly line. HTTP client is not null here, possible null reference return, but it will be all handled in the application. So that part is now over. So we can await statement will bring the JSON in the JSON form, this page response. It will get the page response for the API endpoint. Now this statement, I have broken this return statement from one line to two line for ease of debugging in the later stages if it is required. So I have created a response object with this code and then returned the response object. Because if you are returning in one line, it will be difficult to, it will be not be possible to evaluate the response in a debugging mode by putting a breakpoint over here or here. So just in case if it is required, you could break this one line of code into two lines. So I have gone from this two line. All right, so that's the end of this lecture. Thank you very much. Welcome again. So in this lecture, I will be creating the customer list component. So what we like to do, so I shall be creating the customer list raiser component, and this component will render the customer list from the consumed customer web API, which we have seen in the previous lectures. And this project is basically to consume the customer web API that was created in the first project of this solution. And this Blazor application will also do all the pagination. So this customer list will act as the vehicle or the mechanism to show the data consumed by the client Blazor application. So let's flip over to the Visual Studio and start coding. So I've got this pages folder of this solution, and I will add a raiser component and call this customer list. Customer list as a raiser. Okay, so this is heading. By default, it has got only a heading and a code section. So what I would like to do is I'll create a page directive here to point to the customer list component if you'd like to test the application on the web browser on the address bar of the web browser. So writing http colon localhost colon port number and then // customer list will render this page, but later on I will be changing that to a navigation menu. All right, so I'll be using a couple of using statements to get this component, this customer list going. So at using web API, that is the project name dot consume, web API dot consume dot services. So web API dot consume is the project name. All right. And then models folder also be used. And then I'll have to inject the all important customer service that we have built in previous lecture, because it is the customer service class which actually consumes the web API, and this is just a front end to that consumption of the web API, customer web API, so that the outside world can see the data of that API. So it is exposing to the outside world, basically customer list. That is what my perception is. All right. So here I'll have to write a lot of markup code above the code section, but it is always good idea to start with the add code block first, because in the add code block I have to create some helper methods to address our issue of rendering a customer list. Not only that, you'll have to do the pagination. So everything will be done in this one component. So I'll have to declare a few variables and a few helper methods which will be used extensively in the markup above the code section. In this section between this header and this code section, it will be markup. So private I will explain when necessary or where necessary. Um, few variables I have written. So I think the name is quite self-explanatory. It is the current page number is 1, current page variable, total number of pages variable, and show first last links false, and max page buttons to show is 25. So this can be set to any number, but this will actually show the number of buttons on this page. So unless it is within a reasonable limit, say 25 or even 20, or it cannot go very high. Otherwise, the whole um, page, the bottom of the page will be filled with buttons only. So you'll not be able to, it will be all cluttered if you have thousands of record. Okay, so I have restricted the maximum page buttons to show 25. So if there are, say, 26th button, so it will be shown as an ellipsis. So if there are more buttons, it will be shown in the ellipsis. So if there are actually 75 pages, so it will be, the user will be guided through the um, ellipsis button, so you can go forward and it will keep on moving. So basically it will show like this. So quick glance at our end product. So see, 25 buttons are there, and then if you go to the next, it will show you uh, okay, if you come to the 25th, it will start showing the 26th onward to 37, and if you come to the 37th button, then 46, and then 46. So like that, it keeps on expanding if there are more than 45, 46 pages. So that is the idea, and this will be some logic I will be explaining to you. So let's close this application for the timing and start coding. After having written all those variables, let's write some helper methods. All are asynchronous methods because we are dealing with um, ASP.NET Core. So ASP.NET Core best practice is all about using async method, asynchronous operation. So although there is no bar, you can always go with the synchronous methods, wherein you don't need to have this async keyword as well as the await keyword. So I'll be using async and await both liberally here. So load data and page number. And it accepts page number and page size. So we'll pass these variables appropriately. And this will be actually capital P. So here it is protesting that page size doesn't exist. So actually I have to declare the page size also. This is a constant because I am just going to keep it constant, const. Constant integer page size equal 10. And now enter this page size. Okay, and then it's all right. But sorry. Semicolon to end this line, and then check for nullness of page response. Then do what? Page response dot page number, current page. Then the total pages, this variable will be initialized here from page response page response dot, is there a total pages, okay. So customers, current page and total pages, these variables are defined now, initialized basically from the page response. Else there are no customers equals null. All right, this is one of the helper methods. There are others. Load data. So page number is 1. First page. Okay. Load last page. Again await and then call the load data again, and then load the total pages, because last page is actually the total pages is 25. The last page is 25 also as well. So total pages, pass on the variable total pages, and finally we'll call the onInitialize method, which is the basically the um, lifecycle method. So when the um, browser is rendered first time, then this onInitialized async is called, and then the data is loaded for the first page. So this method is invoked when the component is ready to start, having received its initial parameters from its parent in the render tree. Okay, so basically it is a good practice to write it at the initial stages as a first method. It starts with protected usually. OnInitialized async is basically again calling the load data method and passing one. So as you can see, I have overridden this method, because if you can see my mouse over, it says that to override this method, if you will perform an asynchronous operation and want the component to refresh when that operation is completed. When calling this onInitialized async method is completed, you need the component to refresh. Okay. Now let's switch over to the markup on this razor component. So putting the add code block, pushing it down below in the page, and then starting over here. So here, what I intend to do is to write the trivial, the important code or critical code to make you understand and explain fully while coding. And so non-trivial code, the trivial code I will be copying and pasting, okay, from my clipboard. So accordingly, I paste the first part, which would have taken a long time to just keep on typing. So if the customers is null, it will show loading. Else it will create a table with a class of table and with the fields headers having ID, first name, last name, contact, email, and it does a for each loop in the customers collection. Customers is again that list of customer, and for each customer in the customers list, it will spit out the ID, first name, last name, contact, and email address. So that is the end of this table, and after that comes the main portion or main part to understand actually. So I will tell everything once I start typing at appropriate junctures. So class pagination, ignore all these squiggly lines. If they are not reset at the moment, it will ultimately all be gone once I complete the coding. So button, create a button, button primary. This is Bootstrap we are using. Bootstrap CSS, button primary, and on click. Load first page. That's the remember that is the first button I showed you with marked as first, last, and then all the buttons in between marked with their numbers. Okay, the page numbers. And then I will copy this one and then change the bits. Button primary again, and on click here, load data. So lambda expression I will use here. Current page minus 1. This is the previous page. Okay, so this is the previous page button or the previous. Previous, first and previous. You can see here that you might question me that, why I didn't go for writing load data like that. It would have given me this error. Argument 2 cannot convert from system.threading.tasks.task to Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Components.event callback. Okay, so that's why this lambda expression is written. So because we have got in the load data, we have got a this argument, a parameter load data. Load first page did not take any argument. Load first page didn't take any argument. So was the last page, but this takes an argument. For that, I have to use an lambda expression. Otherwise, it is giving me this cannot convert from system.threading.task.task to Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Components.event callback. So this lambda expression is actually helpful, creates an event callback for the provided receiver and callback. This is all asynchronous. Now next logic is if total pages is less than or equal to the maximum page buttons to show, which was 25, and then there's something to be done. Let's see. Yeah, automatically it writes the loop for me. So int I equals, just change the bits that I require to change. Int I equals length I less than total pages. Total pages I plus plus. Sorry, int page number equals I. Why I? This is a local variable I have created to capture the current page number. Okay, because current page number is only um, can be held by a variable through this I loop. You can see loop operator, whatever this. So that will be assigned the page number. The current page number is assigned this variable. Otherwise, it is for tracking. So if current page equals page number, or if I equals rather the page number equals the current page. Current page button primary disabled. I'll tell you in a second why it is so, why it should be disabled at I to capture the value of the this I current page. Okay, so if I equals current page, then primary button will be disabled because if you are already on the current page. Okay, other because if you need to go to another page, not the current page, then those pages will be um, enabled. But if you are already on the current page and you want to go to the current, there's no point in looking to go to the same page where you are already. Okay, so if else this part will be the same. Rather, let us write it again. Primary and at on click again the lambda expression implies that load data with the page number. Because this page number will be the internal variable generated by this loop. So first condition, if it is in the current page and if you want to view the current page, if I is the current page, then primary button this will be disabled. Otherwise, it will load the load data method with the page number and again at I, because I is the value that we want to capture on the button. At I. Okay. So if there are 50 pages, so if the I is at 37th page, then I will pass 37, the value 37 to the load data Okay, and what was the load data method again? The load data method was exactly, it was calling the, and it was getting the response from the customer service, and if it was not null, then it was getting the data, the customer's data, and the current page and the total pages. All right. So um, else, so if this was in that first section of this loop, if total page is less than equal to maximum page buttons to show, if it is more than that, then comes the fun. Then you need to show an ellipse, as I was telling in the beginning. Else, there is span class ellipses. Hmm, ellipses. Three dots. Now we'll calculate the start and end page numbers to display. So in start pages, I'll explain in detail a little bit later, or maybe in the next lecture. For the time being, let's just do it because it will be ending in a very long lecture. Max page buttons to show divided by 2. Okay. Now I'll have to ensure start page and end page are within the valid range. If start page is by any chance less than 1, then you make start page as 1. You force it to be 1, of course. And end page is maximum page buttons to show. That is, say 25, if it is set as 25. Else if end page is greater than total pages, force the end page to total pages. Start page class. Okay, so two cases of showing the start pages. If it is less than 1, do this start page, make it to 1, and end page max page buttons to show. And if end page is greater than the total pages, say total pages is 50 and end page is say 51, so end page make it to 50, force it to 50, and start page equals total pages, say 50 minus, just put it in the middle, because 50 minus 25 plus 1, that is 25 plus 1, 26. Start page is shifted to a middle, so for the convenience of viewing. So display page number buttons. So other than that, okay, so this, now we have to show the display the page numbers. Okay, so now I have to show the ellipsis icon if not on the last page. So if current page is less than total page, say total pages are 50, current page is just 26, so I have to show the ellipsis. So again call the span class ellipsis. Ellipsis, 3 dots will simulate ellipsis. Okay, so here, now if finally current page is less than total page, display. So finally, if current page is less than total pages, remember here if you revisit, if current page was greater than 1, and we loaded the first page button, and it was not the, it should be the previous. First and previous page, and similarly the last and next. These two buttons have to be there. So basically, if current page is less than total page is many more. So current page is less than total pages, we had the span class ellipsis, but we need then the next button and the last button. To how to get this next and last button is the similar replica of what we did for the previous first and previous buttons over here for the button markup. If you look into this, at on click load first page and first page button, and for the previous button it was load data current page -1. Okay, current page -1 previous. Now this is actually next is current page +1, and on click load last page, call the load last page. So I think that's about everything. So what I did lastly was I just registered this customer service in the program class here. Okay, and this line of code, single line of code, adding HTTP client on the startup class or the program class as per se, is actually registering the customer service to the uh, configure services method of the or the service collections, and also it is creating a base address. It is giving the client a base address, which is the https colon localhost colon this port number 7185, which is the port number that it is calling to get the backend web API. So after this, if you run this application, what I have done that I had to actually make the both the projects as startup project here. Click on properties, and I've already made multiple startup projects. Both the projects are startup. Okay, and I have applied it earlier. So click on OK, and if I start, then both the projects will start simultaneously. So this is the web API project, and this is it was running on the background. The web API project is also running in the other page. So let me show you. First, let me show you the result of the output. Customer list. So this is my project. Wow, voila, everything is built just fine, neat and clean customer list with ID, first name, last name, contact, email, everything is there, and we are on the first page. You can go to the second page, third page, fourth page, or any page intermediate, page 20, page 28. See the records, and then you can go to the last page. This is absolutely last page. This can go to the first page, absolutely first page, and then you can go to, there is no previous page because we are on the first page, and there is on the last page there is no next page. So everything is working as per expectation, and let me show you that this project was also running web API project, so both has to run simultaneously as I showed to you. Hopefully this is a lot to take in this single lecture, but I think it is worth taking. So any questions, please raise your hands in the appropriate forums. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome all. Although our application is now complete in every regards, but there is a small thing that I need to do just to make for ease of our browsing to that customer list. So we'll create a navigation menu for the customer list component, and I shall create the navigation menu for the customer list component, and the navigation gives a user-friendly way to browse a URL, and it eliminates the inconvenience of the route to be typed on the address bar. So what are we waiting for? Let's flip over to Visual Studio, and I have opened the navmenu.razor file, so where all the menus are located. So just let's copy one of these menus and just paste it over there. And instead of href being fetch data, this should be, if you know it, it should be customer list, as it is defined on the that customer list component, customer list. Okay, like it is that add page directive for fetch data is /fetch data. So this is the same way for the customer list. You still needed, although you needed the navigation menu at the end, you still need to declare a page directive so that it is routed to this page even through the nav menu. So href is customer list, so I'll just delete this and make it customer list. And this is as simple as that. So let's test the application once again. Click on start or start without debugging. Control F5. So we've got this customer list navigation menu, and clicking on this should load the customer list. Great. So that marks the end of this entire series of Blazor server app or Blazor application consuming a customer web API, and also having the pagination done and with all the links properly working and tested.